Okay. All right. You still there, Rich?
Yes, I am.
All right. So I guess we'll go ahead and get rolling. So one of the big things last year was the new on-screen tutorials, helping new players dive in and learn all the intricacies because it's such a complex strategy. What else kind of joined the mix this year that makes Out of the Park Baseball 24 the right time for new players to jump in?
Well, the best answer to that question is the community. I am regularly and just almost on a daily basis delighted by how welcoming the community of Out of the Park Baseball is, whether it's in our Discord, which has, I think, almost 12,000 members, or whether it's on our forums, which have been around for a couple of decades. Unlike, and I'm not trying to criticize anybody, quite the opposite, but unlike some gaming communities where people that are new can be intimidated, it's really the opposite. Whenever a new person pops up in Discord on the forums and says, "Hey, I'm new to the game. Any suggestions, advice?" It's incredible how people jump in and help. It's a very welcoming, friendly community because it's relatively small and close knit, and people really get a kick out of helping newcomers enjoy the game. And as you mentioned, there's so much to it, right? There's the base game with the franchise mode, which is so deep. It's almost, you could do an hour and a half on all the stuff going on there. Or whether it's Perfect Team, which is, online, persistent, competitive, but yet also is a much smaller slice of the game than franchise mode. There's the community really does a great job, not just in those areas where I mentioned, but we have a bunch of people who are streamer affiliates who stream. There's 3 to 4 hours of live streaming of Out of the Park Baseball almost every day on Twitch. With Twitch drops. So that really, last year we really invested in the in-game experience to help people. And this year it was much more about we're doing our absolute best to empower the community to help each other, because it's so much easier to find information than ever before. And so, we put our Discord and we put our Twitch streams and we put everything sort of front and center in the game. So that's really this year, the focus on helping new players is on helping them communicate with each other and get targeted help, right? It's one thing to have a tutorial that, needs to be sort of encompassing everything. It's another thing when someone says, "I really want to know the best way to sign an international free agent," right? That's a very specific thing. And when people say those specific areas they need help with, they get help very quickly from our amazing community.
And I have to commend y'all on the online manual is a great resource for players and fans, for fans getting in, but it doesn't matter how good a manual is, how well you work the text, how well you work the search function. There's always going to be something you think of, something you run into in the game where you're like, okay, I want to do A, I don't know how to do that. And being able to go to the community is it's that instantaneous connectivity, because someone who's been playing the game for a few years probably knows right off the top of their head exactly how to do that little thing you're trying to find the button for. So yeah, that definitely, I think the community makes a big impact. And I've definitely noticed the on-screen tutorials are very helpful in getting used to different things, but there's a lot of it, I feel like you just have to play. And that's the way a lot of games are, that you're going to have to play, you're going to have to fail to realize the way that you missed things so that you can change it for the next run.
Exactly. Yeah. And, look, I've been playing this game for over 10 years. Both before I joined the organization and since. And today I had to ask one of the guys on the team, where do I find this button? Because, again, like you said, there's so many different kinds of things you could be looking for. And I needed to find a button as to where the commissioner mode is. I'm predictions every day for the Cubs for the marquee TV network. And so I got to be able to control both the teams. And I made a mistake when I set up the live start. I didn't turn the commissioner mode on. So now I needed to turn it on again. I'm like, where is that button? I know I should know this, and I can eventually find it. But if I ask somebody who knows, I'll find out in 13 seconds as opposed to 20 minutes of me poking around in 9 different settings.
As opposed to hunting the whole time, and then finally you realize it was right in front of you.
It was right there. Exactly. You got it.
So another one, the historical league mode in Out of the Park 24 is a great addition. We've seen kind of further expansion in recent years. The big example on a larger game sim scale, I think, was NBA 2K23, that with my NBA eras, the way they
play it every day.
The way they introduced historical aspects to the franchise mode in that game is really just fantastic. I'm always excited to see, further expansions of that in every game. But with Out of the Park 24 specifically, there's the option to include Negro Leagues and jump back to play in that era. with the Negro Leagues being spotlighted in MLB The Show 23 for the first time this year, how long have the Negro Leagues been in Out of the Park 24 that you know of? And are there any plans to continue to expand, include additional historical players or teams?
So when we first licensed the game with Major League Baseball, was the first introduction of the Negro Leagues. And that was, I should know this off the top of my head. I think it was 2016, might have been 2017. But the Negro Leagues have been in the game for a long time now. And there's a couple different ways. You can just play the Negro Leagues as they were with the players and the team. And you can do that now. And you've been able to do that for, like I said, 6, 7, 8 years. But you can also, and again, this isn't brand new at all. You can also basically say, you know what, I'm going to right the wrong. And I'm going to allow all the guys that were in the Negro League team into the major leagues, way before Jackie Robinson changed the world in 1947. So you can go back and start a season in the 20s and say, I'm going to remove the color barrier. And I'm going to, make all of these guys free agents and just have either myself place them on teams or have the AI, draft them and they become, members of the various, major leagues that were there.
Actually,
and you can
actually try to answer that question of, what would have happened if John Donaldson and Rube Foster and Jackie Robinson and Martin Dihigo and all these different names had actually been in the MLB when they should have been?
Yeah, I mean, baseball history would be completely different and would be, I don't even know how to say it other than just saying it would be better, right? Like it would be better. Like,
hands down.
I love baseball.
It's a dark part of the history, but it's important to remember because of its importance to the evolution of the sport.
Yeah, and I love baseball. One of the things I love about baseball is it's been around for so long. But I have a hard time really sort of enjoying the aspects of the game before 1947. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm grandstanding. It's really just comes down to education. The last few years in particular, like I've read a bunch, I've read Hank Aaron's great biography, autobiography, excuse me. I Had a Hammer, which was really enlightening to me, not just about Henry Aaron, but like if you don't know and if you don't read or you don't research, you might think that, when Jackie Robinson and Branch Rickey broke the color barrier in 1947, everything got great, right? Minority players had a terrible experience for 10, 15, 20 years after the fact, if not longer.
I mean, you don't really have to go that far back. I mean, you go to the 90s.
Right.
There's the Marge Schott situation.
Right.
Where she was the owner of the Cincinnati Reds and just lambasting her players and saying the most bigoted, terrible things you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. But it's like, it blows my mind when I'm reading that, Henry Aaron and Willie Mays couldn't stay at the same hotel as the rest of the guys on the team, right? Or there were quotas, right? You could only have so many African-American ball players on your team, and I also didn't realize that the National League was much better about bringing African-American players and minority players into the fold than the American League was for a long time, right? Like, when you watch baseball these days, there's a lot of those things that you don't really realize and understand. And to baseball's credit, they do, I think, an amazing job of celebrating Jackie Robinson and what he did. And they also do a great job of celebrating Roberto Clemente, and they do a great job of celebrating Lou Gehrig. And there's in a lot of ways, there's no reasons to sort of continue to dwell on the sins of the past from when you're running a sport. But on the other hand, I do give them a lot of credit for recognizing every single April 15th how important that day is. So it's the kind of thing where I like where baseball is today, and I do have a hard time sort of believing isn't the right word, but I do have a harder time now than ever sort of looking at teams from the 20s and the 30s and before then and sort of thinking to myself, well, these were the best teams and the best players, because they weren't the best players and they weren't the best teams. They were just what was on the field at the time.
It makes, it's entirely possible that there were big players from the Negro Leagues era in the MLB, in the National Leagues, that would have continued to be the greatest player.
Right.
But there's probably a lot who would not have been. There's probably a lot who would have been lower tier players who would not have gotten the star and the opportunity that they would have, because there were more talented players there who deserved those opportunities.
No doubt about it.
So shifting topics a little bit, one of the biggest aspects of any sports franchise mode is trade, and it can be one that's tough to get right. First, can you talk about the new dynamic trading deadline day feature they added this year?
Yes. Yeah, this was something I'm not a game designer. I would never purport to be. but this was something where, I feel like I at least had a little bit of an influence on it. So it's certainly a little favorite of mine. I love sports video games. I always have, and I always will. One of the things I love about FIFA is the transfer deadline day, where it counts down the clock and it shows you who's moving around. And there's an element of anxiety and almost thrill and nervousness. And we've been talking about it for years.
And there's a real-time aspect to it.
A real time, exactly, right. And we've been talking about it for years. It wasn't new, but we were able to really crystallize what we wanted the trade deadline experience to be this year. And we basically just wanted to introduce a level of excitement because, again, it's different now than it was even 10, 15 years ago, right? Like now in Major League Baseball, the trade deadline day is a big deal. MLB Network is on all day long. Deals are coming in. It's happening on social media. Like, we wanted to bring some more of that level of excitement in the moment to the game. And that's where this all came from, right? It was like looking at what other games do, like we always do, and looking at what's happening in the real world of Major League Baseball. And we just wanted to make thrilling and real time, have a fear of missing out, right? If you don't make that offer, oh my gosh, the guy just got picked up, just got traded to another team. We wanted to put as much of that into it as possible. And I think we did a good job.
That aspect, the feeling that really stands out to me, because I've played through the trading deadline day a few times now. And, as a newer player who's still kind of getting used to some of the intricacies. And so I don't make a lot of trade offers myself because I'm not as used to the system yet.
Right.
So I'm still figuring out what is a good way to go about that. But I get plenty of trade offers that come in. And every time one comes in, I go, should I wait for the next trading cycle? If I wait one more, will I get a better deal?
Right. Yeah.
But then you run the risk of, okay, if I wait one more, then maybe it's over.
Right.
Maybe then I'm out of time and I can't get them or get rid of them.
Yep.
So yeah, it definitely
That's what we were
adds
going
to
for.
it. And then the other two big options for trading this year was the hard mode and the trading reputation system. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, the trading reputation system was, again, it's another thing that's really sort of based off of what we've seen happen in the real game, in the real world. For example, the Tampa Bay Rays are known for just being really, really good at trading. The players they get seem to perform better than the players that they send off.
Yeah.
And so that has made a lot of real world teams wary of trading with the Rays. And so we really wanted to introduce better mechanic representing not just that, but also, who is good to do business with and who might not be good to do business with. So, if you're the kind of person who negotiates and then doesn't pull the trigger a bunch of times, your reputation will change based upon your actions and your behaviors, and teams will be more willing or less willing to do deals with you. So it's just another one of those parts of, we wanted to introduce something new and interesting based upon what you do or what you don't do. And that was the impetus for the upgraded trading reputation. And same thing with the hard mode. We've heard loud and clear that at times trading can be too easy, and players can build these super teams if they want to. And so we wanted to make sure
I feel like that, I don't know for sure that this is something that factored into y'all's decision, but something that I feel like could add to it is every year, every sports game comes out. And what is the joke on every Reddit, on every forum, on every tweet? Look at this trade I pulled off. Look at this idiot AI who traded for this terrible player.
Yeah.
And so part of the problem is you can manipulate a game forever. You're eventually going to pull off something like that.
Yeah.
But I feel like, hard mode changes that and kind of crystallizes the challenge of it so that you don't feel like you can just get away with any trade.
That's right. And part of the beauty of Out of the Park is you can have a bunch of different games going with a bunch of different settings, right? Sometimes you just want to have fun. And sometimes someone's idea of having fun is, I want to trade my backup shortstop for Shohei Ohtani, right? And if that's what you want to do that day, go for it. Where else in the world can you do that except Out of the Park baseball? And other times you want to be like, all right, I want to feel like what it's like to be a real general manager, really running a team in Major League Baseball, where I got to be really, really good, and I got to know what I want and know what the value is, and put together a deal with another guy who's just as good and just as smart. And that's where the trading hard mode comes in. Some of our players really, really want that significant challenge. And not for nothing, some of our players are actually people who work in Major League Baseball front office. And, we got some feedback that helped us make that mode a little bit better as well. And So it was almost like we wanted to make sure that, we could measure up to, what the real world is like when it comes to trading, because we value, and we market the game based upon authenticity. And so we wanted to make sure that we could give players the most authentic level of trading that we got, because trading is such a huge part of baseball, but it's also, again, like every team is really, really smart. You know what I mean? Like you're only going to be able to pull off a trade with the team if they're getting something that they want a value and you're getting something that you want a value. So that's where that came from. And again, we recognize that sometimes people want that and sometimes they don't. And both of those things are okay. And we want people to be able to have fun and have a challenge. And sometimes those can be different experiences.
Yeah, it's just a different way to play. I think when you're coming at it versus, wanting to challenge yourself versus just trying to relax or have fun in the sandbox. I mean, it's kind of not unlike, because it's the most popular sandbox game now, playing in creative mode versus challenge mode. It's the same kind of concept, being able to, actually give yourself rival challenges and have to try, or you just want to build stuff, Why not put Craig Biggio and Jeff Bagwell and Sammy Sosa and Barry Bonds on all the same team?
Wouldn't that be fun?
Wouldn't it be fun?
Wouldn't that be fun? Yes, exactly. No, I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you.
So similarly, you kind of mentioned this, but I don't know if you can tell any stories without name dropping or anything, but are there like examples of that feedback y'all have gotten from actual MLB front office people and how y'all communicate as you try and keep up the authenticity?
Yeah, I mean, we have relationships with a number of Major League Baseball clubs, and they're all different, right? Sometimes we have conversations with people in the organizations a few times a year. Sometimes a couple of years go by and the only conversation is, hey, when you guys have the update, could you let us know? Teams use the game in different ways for very different things. Like some of the teams use the game to almost like do a little bit of scouting, right? Like these teams all have like the best scouting information in the world. But like what you can do with Out of the Park is you can, sort of look ahead and say, oh, who's on this team's AAA and AA, and if they were playing, what would their numbers look like? So it's almost like just an easy way to scout and sort of see what a player might look like. Other teams use it for like staff reps, right? Like, in preparation for a game, they'll load up a scenario and be like, all right, it's the seventh inning. It's a getaway day. We know we only got 3 guys in the bullpen that can throw. Now it's the seventh inning, first and second, 1 out. Our starting pitcher is tired. What do we want to do here, right? And they go around and everybody gives their feedback, and then they press a couple buttons and sees what happens. And those are just a couple of examples. And so what happens is we have it's an occasional, but it's a regular back loop from different people. And sometimes it's the manager of a club. Sometimes it's like someone in the front office. Sometimes it's from the scouting department. Like we get information back from all these different folks. It's hard to come up with something super specific, but like I can tell you, for example, that like, we have been able to give, modified versions of our game to, a couple different teams based upon what they said would help them do some of the analysis that they like to do. And ultimately, some of those things make their way back into the game. And, like the sort of the minds of people when they're trading or when they're scouting have definitely gone into helping us upgrade the trading and the scouting modes in the game. But again, we also have to balance it with, it is a video game and it needs to be fun. And if you make something too complex or too difficult, that actually winds up being a negative. So that's a long-winded answer, and I don't know if I answered it. But I mean, there's a lot of feedback that we've gotten over the years that we sort of both organically and explicitly will work into the game one way or the other.
Yeah, well, and it's always a balancing act between adding the complexity while still keeping it approachable and fun and manageable.
You got it.
And honestly, it makes a lot of sense that some teams would look at it because of how much baseball come to rely on analytics. And so ultimately, that's what this is, analytics. It's a game.
100%. Yeah.
But I mean, it's a game built on analytics.
And the other thing
being able to simulate that is special.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we always make sure that we tell everyone, whether it's the major league clubs and the minor league clubs, like we're not saying that when we run a simulation 1,000 times that this is what's going to happen. What we're saying is, if you played it 1,000 times, this is what we think will happen over that aggregate. Or like right now, with the Cubs, we do the daily predictions and send them the predictions every day for what's going to go on in the Cubs game. And we run 162 simulations of that game with the announced lineups and the announced pitchers. And it's not Out of the Park saying, this is what's going to happen, that the Cubs are going to win 10-3, and here's the winner and the loser. It's like, well, we played the game 162 times. 80 times the Cubs won, 82 times the Dodgers won. So we think it's going to be a close game. And, we think that probably, and I'm, even looking at it right here, it looks like, the guy who's probably best positioned to have the biggest offensive day is going to be Freddie Freeman, and it's going to be Patrick Wisdom. And we just sort of provide the information. And instead of saying, here's what's going to happen, we just run it and present it. And then the team at Marquee just sort of looks at it and makes their own determination from it as well. So, there's just a lot of different ways you can use it.
Take that data and then kind of draw your own conclusions. Because
exactly
with analytics, that's ultimately always what it is. That it's raw data means what you want it to mean. It means what you read into it and what context you can add to it. And so, it's never a guarantee, but at the same time, chances are that's the way the ships are going to fall. And
it also said, if this were run on a computer, here's what would happen. But we all know that the games are actually played by human beings on the field. So anything can happen, right?
Yeah.
Anything can happen. But if you were to do it a lot of times, the tendencies show that this would happen more often than not, and that kind of.
Well, and, one aspect of it is the ratings and everything and what ratings each team has. But as I think we talked about briefly last year, the best team in baseball is never necessarily the one that wins the World Series.
Especially now.
Especially now.
Yep.
And so just because the numbers say that's the way things are going to fall, you're not guaranteeing that's the way things are going to fall. You're just trying to get more context and a better idea and more information about the way it might go.
You're 100% right. One of the things that I'd like to point out, and one of the things that we have some fun with is, for 80% of the history of baseball, the top 3 or 4 teams were the only teams who had any opportunity to win a championship. So now that's completely different. You can be the Astros of last year and be the number 1 team in the league and win the pennant, or you can be the Phillies who snuck into the playoffs on the last day of the regular season and won the pennant. And so we've gone back and just for fun, we said, well, what if we had the 2023 rules in 1927? Well, yeah, the Yankees still won the World Series a lot, but not nearly as often as they won it when we run it using those things. Like the history of baseball would be completely different. Different.
Yeah.
The Yankees would not have won as many World Series. The Cardinals would not have won nearly as many World Series because the opportunities for them to be knocked off would be exponentially high. And that's just another one of the examples of, you can use the games to see interesting things, trends that would or would not have happened. Same thing with, bringing in the Negro League players. What would baseball have looked like different? It's not saying here's what would have happened, but it's saying
could have happened.
Here's what could have happened. And the more that you would, the more times that you would run it, the tendencies go in one direction or another.
Yeah, which makes sense. Let me see. There was an expansion of the international amateur free agent system this year.
Yeah.
How do you think that, will continue to add? And we talked about this a little bit last year, but, y'all had recently done the Korean localization and added the KBO. Are there any further plans to continue adding more international licenses or localization?
So the international scouting was a big deal because that was one of the areas of our game which hadn't really been gotten an upgrade for a few seasons. And like a lot of things in baseball, a lot has changed with international scouting in the last 4 or 5 years, the rules and the finances. So we were really happy because that was an area where we had been getting some of our, most hardcore fans saying, hey, you guys would really love it if you make this a little
step
bit
things
more
up a notch. Yeah.
Exactly. So that came directly from the community. That was exactly where that came from. And we're happy with how it came out, and we're getting a lot of good feedback on it. In terms of, other international leagues, like one of the things that we did this year was with the KBO license, we also introduced what we've had for the Major League Baseball for the last couple of years, the concept of the live start, right? So the live start is a really fun feature. In fact, that's what we use doing our predictions for the Cubs every day. We do the live start for today. So based upon today's injuries, today's trades, to everything that's happening right now, here's the situation. We introduced that for the KBO. So for our KBO fans, they can use that live start feature. So if they buy the game today and they want to play the season, they can play it from the start a few weeks ago, or they can play it starting from right now. So that was a big feature for our fans in Korea that we're excited about. We would love to add more licensed leagues and more international leagues. It just comes down to really relationships and then budgets. We have a fantastic relationship with Major League Baseball. We have a fantastic relationship with the KBO, and that's because we, we've been a licensee of Major League Baseball for years, and with KBO, our company headquarters is in Seoul, so they have personal relationships with people at the KBO. We don't yet have those personal relationships with some of the other leagues. We would love that. It's not just as simple as writing a check. There's more to it that comes down to that, and we're such a small team. It's a challenge to be able to put all of those pieces together. That said, we have a roadmap, and more international licenses are absolutely on that roadmap. It just comes down to our ability to secure them, to properly budget them, because when you have licenses, they're expensive, as they should be, right? That's what people want, is licensed stuff. So the leagues, the leagues charge appropriate fees for those, and you have to work those into your overall P&L to determine, can we afford this? And if we do this, will this help grow our game enough to support the
so that's really what it comes
down to.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
So another big thing, and this is kind of not necessarily brand new in any way for Out of the Park 24, but continues to expand every year, it's ultimate customization. That it's the sandbox where you can change every little detail. But for players that either they've been out for a few years, so they don't know how it's changed, or maybe they haven't played it at all, can you talk about just how in-depth and customizable it can be, like down to the game file?
Yeah. So the tag for Out of the Park Baseball is the Infinite Baseball Sandbox. You can, with almost any amount of reason, set up your baseball universe however you want. For example, if you want to start with Major League Baseball as it's run right now to this minute, with the rules and the new stuff and the DH in both leagues, and banning of shifts and all of that, you can do that. If you want to make a few tweaks, if you're like, I don't like the fact that they banned shifts, I want shifts to be on, check a box and shifts are now in. On the other side, you can say, you know what, I don't like how the American League and the National League divisions are set up. I want to construct an entirely new way to run baseball. I want to create new leagues, new divisions, new teams, and I just want to have a fantasy draft and baseball in my own image. With, instead of 30 teams, I want 50 teams, or I want 20 teams, and I want a DH in one league and not a DH in another league, and I want to put Mike Trout on the Phillies, and I want to put Ohtani on the Dodgers. Like you can completely construct your own completely customized universe in terms of teams, rules, who's in the playoffs. If you want to go back to 1955, where only two teams qualified for playoffs and they're in the World Series, and everything in, you can set up multiple tiers where you can have promotion and relegation like European football. Like you can literally create your own completely custom world using real teams, real players, or fictional teams and fictional players, or a mixture of both. Or I want to put Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth and Josh Gibson and Mike Trout and Mookie Betts and Satchel Paige all in the same universe, and just have like a complete blast. You literally can construct almost anything. I don't want to say anything because someone will say, well, I wanted to have a 475 team league, but within reason, you can construct almost anything. It's pretty amazing.
The feature that once I found it was my favorite little one is realizing that you can change the photo for your manager owner. And so as a wrestling fan, I've done a lot of coverage of WWE 2K and 2K23. They, in the last couple of years, introduced the My GM mode, which allows you to put transparent photos that you can upload to represent your GM. So I followed that track, and I found an old photo of Stan Hansen, which is a very popular wrestler, or not very popular. He's a huge wrestler from Texas in the 80s and 90s and was huge in Japan. But one of the most fun little tidbits is, I can go, what if Stan Hansen was the GM of the Astros in 95? And he's right there. You got his little picture right there. And it's, as I kind of found more of the things, that was my favorite thing at the customization, is realizing, other games, they let you do custom logos, but here you can change every little detail. You can change every little image file you want to. And, some players aren't going to want to deal with all that minutia, and it's still great without it. But if you want to take that and make it look exactly like you want, it's there.
I'm just glad that you mentioned that, because that's another example of how, it's both the blessing and the curse of Out of the Park. There's just so many directions you can go and so many little nuances. I'm constantly seeing and hearing people say, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could do that, right? Like, or I didn't know that was an option. And, that's the blessing. The curse of it is there's so much that you can do and customize. Sometimes you might get completely lost, and you might look up and you'd be like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know what I'm trying to accomplish anymore. I've gone down this crazy rabbit hole.
But I discovered that feature by picking the wrong image and breaking it because I picked an image that was way too big, and then suddenly none of the buttons were selectable because it took up too much space.
Yeah.
So I had to just close it out and try again, and it worked fine. But yeah, I mean, that's the risk, is you end up having bugs you need to fix and little tweaks and everything, but it takes some time to get it all in place. I'm trying to think. Owner goals. That was the other big one this year. Updated owner goals.
Yeah, that's another one where those had not really been upgraded for quite some time. And people were saying, hey, look, you should probably take another run at these and modify and tweak them. You know, a lot of the things that we do come directly from the community. And, you know, again, blessing and curse, right? The blessing of Out of the Park Baseball is every single year we get a new opportunity to deliver a new game with new features and new upgrades and new changes. You know, the curse is that you don't have a whole lot of time to do it, right? Like, with a game like Out of the Park Baseball, where the studio is so small, really, there's only like 4 developers, and they have to do everything. You know, the live service development, the base game development, all of that kind of stuff, right? Like, you know, so when we release Out of the Park every year, we're maintaining that game and servicing that game for about 6 or 7 months, right? We do patches and updates and so all the time. So you're only able to spend a couple, 2 or 3 months really doing design and development for the next year's game.
Yeah.
And so we really have to prioritize and figure out what can we do well with the resources that we have and the time that we have. And so that's why sometimes it goes 3 or 4 or 5 years where scouting or international scouting or owner goals don't get the love, but we're doing other stuff. And you know, so long story short, like we were able to, you know, we've been getting the feedback for a few years, and we're able to say, okay, this is one of the things that we're going to do. We're going to focus some time and some efforts on these owner goals and make them better, more like 2023. Because again, baseball has changed a lot in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And owner goals change too, right? Like it's a lot easier. It's not easy, but it's a lot easier to make the playoffs now than it was 5 years ago. And certainly than 10 or 15 years ago. And yeah, you know, there's a lot that's changed, and we had the feedback, and we knew we needed to take a run at it again, and we did. And again, we're getting good feedback. We have some, you know, some other feedback that we're gonna, you know, obviously look to improve. We're always looking to improve, but that was definitely something where we knew it had been enough time, and we needed to focus on and make those a little more realistic to what baseball is like in 2023.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And that was, I listened to, I think it was the Out of the Park podcast, talking about the owner goals. And one of the things that was pointed out, which I think makes perfect sense, is that, you know, there are side goals, but if you get in the playoffs and win the World Series, the owner's not going to care what goals you hit. So, you know, you want to focus on them, but if you can succeed, they're still going to be okay with things.
That's exactly right.
You know, winning cures all.
The other thing that I find morbid is I've seen a couple people say this, like, look, you know, if you don't like your owner, right, if you think his goals are unrealistic, put it in commissioner mode, make his date of birth to where he's like 120 years old, and very soon your problems will all disappear. I'm like, I don't think that is not an intended outcome here. I
mean, if it works, it works.
Yeah. Not an intended outcome, not something we endorse. We shouldn't have even said that, but you know, it's out there, and you know, it's Out of the Park Baseball. Wacky things happen in Out of the Park Baseball. There's no getting around that.
No, absolutely. That's kind of all the big stuff I want to talk about. Is there anything else you want to talk about with the game? Kind of, you know, just what fans can look for this year.
Well, I want to just, we sort of started, but I want to make sure, I want to give a tremendous amount of credit to, we have an affiliate group of people who stream the game every day. And they are tremendous. They are such champions for the game. And they are right now nearing the end of a self-organized 35-hour live stream-a-thon where they've been streaming Out of the Park Baseball right now. They've been handing it off every couple hours to different people in the streaming affiliates. And there's nothing more gratifying when you're part of a team that creates something, to see other people be able to not just enjoy it, but share that joy with other people purely because they want to, right? Like they're not on the, you know, they don't work for the company. They're not on the team. They're affiliates. They're people who have said, hey, I'd like to be an affiliate. And by being an affiliate of ours, you get Twitch drops, which people love, right? So it helps them generate more viewers and build out their community. But like, I cannot express how wonderful it is that these kind of things happen, because we do streaming on our own channel and we get a bunch of nice viewers, but it's one thing to stream on your own channel, your own game. It's another thing when people on their own time, when people could do anything they want to. You can choose how to spend your time and your money in any way these days. They're choosing to spend it playing out of the park baseball, showing people the cool parts of it, helping people understand. It's an amazing thing. And it's such a great symbol of our amazing community. The community around out of the park baseball is and continues to be the best in the business as far as I'm concerned. And it's a thrill to see it happen. And I just wanted to, say again, how much I appreciate what they do and how much joy it brings to the community, and how I think it makes people in the out of the park community want to keep playing and be part of it, because over the years, it just keeps growing and getting better and better. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. I'm just so happy about that.
Well, and that's absolutely understandable. I mean, it's been great. There's plenty of flaws in the kind of techno society that we've waltzed our way into, but at the same time, we get to connect in, all sorts of different ways. And now, whether it be gaming or other, creators have a whole new way to see the way fans appreciate their art. That it's, back in the day, you kind of you did it, you send it out there and you go, I hope they liked it. And you never know more. And you go, okay, well, the sales are good, so I guess they liked it.
Right.
Versus now you can get that kind of real-time feedback, real-time back and forth of, okay, they like this, they don't like this. Well, maybe we'll change that next year.
Yep, you got it. It's extraordinary. And it's the good part of the technology-based society that we live in now. It's the good part.
For sure. That's kind of all the big stuff I wanted to touch on. Thank you again for your time. I'm glad it worked out. And I'm not sure where there's going to be a written interview, and some of the video clips will potentially go out on social. Any of that I will get from my people and then pass along to y'all so y'all can boost it and everything.
Awesome. I thank you for your time very much. I appreciate it. And I hope we keep getting to connect every year. I really enjoy spending time with you.
Definitely.
Good vibes all around. Thank you, gentlemen, both for your time today. And take care, Patches. We'll be in touch about anything you need. Just hit up either myself or Catherine, okay?
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Kyle. Just that Patches Chance email that you sent the invite to, if you can just pass the file along to that whenever you have it, either Dropbox or Google Drive, whatever's fine.
Totally. It shouldn't be more than 10 minutes or so before that gets cut. So
that's fine.
All right. Awesome. Take care. Have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Y'all take care.
Thank you.